Hello, and welcome to today's event, the State of 911 webinar series, hosted by the National 911 Program. My name is Dane, and I will be the moderator for today's session. This webinar series is designed to provide useful information for the 911 stakeholder community about federal and state participation in the planning, design, and implementation of next-generation 911 systems. It includes real experiences from leaders overseeing these transitions throughout the country. Today's session will feature two presentations, the first led by Mr. Timothy May, a policy analyst for the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and the second by Mr. Jason Barber, the 911 Director for Johnston County, North Carolina, and past NENA President. Both sessions will feature a short Q&A period after the speaker's presentation. For more information on future National 911 Program webinars or to access to archived recordings or to learn more about the National 911 Program, please visit 911.gov. Feedback or questions about the webinars can be sent to national911team@mcp911.com. If you are experiencing difficulty within the WebEx application, please call WebEx Technical Assistance at 866-229-3239 and select option 1. Please note that all participants' phone lines have been put in a listen-only mode and this webinar is being recorded. To ask questions of our presenters, feel free to take one of two actions. Using WebEx's chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, enter your question at any time during the presentation and it will be entered into the queue. Or to ask your question live, use the raise hand feature to request your phone line to be unmuted and you will be called upon to ask your question. With that, I would like to introduce Ms. Laurie Flaherty, Coordinator for the National 911 Program. Laurie, please go ahead.
Thanks, Dane. It is my pleasure to introduce Tim May, who's going to be doing our first presentation this morning. Tim is a policy analyst with the Policy and Licensing Division of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau at the FCC, but more importantly, he's been a tireless advocate for 911 and a real true friend to all of us who care about 911 issues. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and he cares an awful lot about 911 issues. So, Tim, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Laurie. That very generous introduction. I should just drop the mic now and walk away. With respect to today, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to provide you with this update on current FCC 911 initiatives. Next slide, please. So today, I want to focus on 5 specific areas: indoor location accuracy, text to 911, 911 reliability, task force on optimal PSAP architecture, and the 6th annual 911 fee report. Next slide, please. So today, I'll start with an overview of the Commission's recently adopted 4th report and order in its location accuracy proceeding. Next slide, please. Our indoor proceeding is founded on the sea change in consumer habits stemming from the near ubiquitous availability of wireless communications. Consumers are replacing traditional landline telephony with wireless phones. Most importantly, the great majority of calls to 911 now originate on wireless phones, and there's an increased likelihood that wireless 911 calls will come from indoor environments. Location information for indoor wireless calls lacks the address-specific information provided with most wireline calls. These changes increase the importance of ensuring that indoor 911 calls can be accurately located. Although PSAPs and wireless providers may be able to address some of the challenges through technological and operational improvements, the Commission's Phase 2 location accuracy rules, which required latitude and longitude information about the likely location of a wireless caller, are essentially outdoor-oriented. That leaves a regulatory gap because traditional location accuracy technologies are optimized for outdoor calling. Thus, by focusing on outdoor requirements for verifying compliance, our rules currently provide no remedy to address poor performance of location technologies indoors. Hence, the indoor location accuracy proceeding began to take shape around solving this problem. Next slide, please. Slide 5 shows the key milestones leading up to the Commission's adoption of new rules. In February 2014, the Commission released the third further notice of proposed rulemaking, proposing to revise the existing E911 framework to require delivery of accurate location information to PSAPs for wireless 911 calls placed from indoors. In the near term, the Commission proposed to establish interim indoor accuracy metrics that would provide approximate location information sufficient to identify the building from most indoor calls, as well as vertical location, or Z-axis or elevation information, that would enable first responders to identify floor level for most calls from multi-story buildings. In the long term, the Commission sought comment on how to develop more granular indoor location accuracy requirements that would provide for delivery to PSAPs of in-building location information at the room or office suite level. The Commission's stated ultimate objective was that all Americans using mobile phones, whether calling from urban or rural areas, from indoors or outdoors, have technology that is capable of providing accurate location information in times of an emergency. There followed an extensive period of comment. In November, however, APCO, NENA, the two major public safety organizations, and the four major nationwide carriers, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon, submitted their roadmap agreement, which was centered on the use of indoor technologies, in particular Wi-Fi and beacons, to deliver a dispatchable location for indoor 911 calls. The Commission allowed for further period of comment. During this time frame, the Competitive Carriers Association submitted its parallel path proposal on behalf of its members, which include most of the nation's non-nationwide CMRS providers, including small, regional, and rural carriers. The parallel path, for the most part, tracked the roadmap and committed the non-nationwide CMRS providers to the same approach and requirements for improving indoor location that the nationwide CMRS providers or wireless providers committed to in the roadmap. However, the parallel path proposed to modify certain roadmap benchmarks and timeframes to afford non-nationwide CMRS providers more time and flexibility to meet their commitments. The signatories to the roadmap and the parallel path further modified their proposals prior to the Commission's January meeting. And on January 29th, after careful consideration, the Commission adopted the fourth report and order. Next slide, please. So what does the order accomplish? First, as a foundational principle, the order establishes clear metrics and timelines for wireless carriers to implement technical solutions that will improve location for indoor wireless calls. I don't know if you guys could forward that. Jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. The order draws from the APCO NENA Nationwide Carrier Roadmap Agreement and Addendum, as well as the CCA Non-Nationwide Carrier Parallel Path Agreement. The order adopts two tracks. Under the first track, the order establishes clear benchmarks to provide PSAPs with enhanced latitude, longitude, and Z-axis information. The other track codifies the carrier's commitments to set forth in the roadmap to develop and deploy a dispatchable location capability. The order goes beyond the initial roadmap and obligates carriers to introduce vertical location capabilities at 3 years and a strong set of backstop benchmarks that will pace closure of the indoor location gap beginning at the 2-year point and finishing at 6 years. Throughout the order, the Commission builds in further backstop requirements to ensure measurable improvement in indoor location. Critically, performance evaluation and monitoring is founded on the creation of an open, independent, transparent, and realistic test bed, coupled with regular assessment of performance using live 911 call data in representative cities. I'd like to now run through each of these key features briefly. Next slide, please. So dispatchable location. It's considered public safety's gold standard, and it is generally equivalent to wireline location information. Dispatchable location is particularly important for situations where an individual cannot communicate, particularly if they have a speech or hearing disability. Although all dispatchable addresses are necessarily civic addresses, not all civic addresses are dispatchable. For example, civic addresses include P.O. boxes, diplomatic boxes, or armed forces pouch addresses. PSAPs, of course, need street address as a start, so it's not enough to include civic address. Therefore, the report and order defines dispatchable location as street address of the calling party, plus additional information such as suite, apartment, or similar information necessary to adequately identify the location of the calling party. In practice, a call from the building I'm working in right now would come across as 445 12th Street, Southwest Washington, D.C., floor 7, and even possibly office 7A, 727. That is quite distinct from a coordinate location of 38.883463 degrees north, 77.028342 degrees west, plus 10 meters or so above ground height. Dispatchable location will necessarily require that a national emergency address database be constructed and maintained. The nationwide carriers have committed to developing and maintaining such a database, and the order requires that these carriers submit a comprehensive privacy and security plan for the database to the Commission for our review and approval within 18 months. Next slide, please. With respect to horizontal location, the order requires that all wireless carriers must provide either dispatchable location or X and Y coordinates within 50 meters of the caller. Within 2 years, they must meet these standards for 40% of all wireless 911 calls. At 3 years, the percentage increases to 50%. At 5 years, it increases to 70%. At 6 years, they must deliver dispatchable location or X and Y coordinates within 50 meters of the caller for 80% of all wireless 911 calls. While these benchmarks apply to all wireless carriers, non-nationwide carriers can extend the 5- and 6-year deadlines based on the timing of voice over LTE deployment throughout their networks. Next slide, please. Turning to vertical location, the order provides that within 3 years, all wireless carriers must make uncompensated barometric pressure data available to 911 call centers from any handset that has the capability to deliver such data. They must also use an independently administered testbed process to develop a reasonable vertical location accuracy threshold that will be submitted to the Commission for its approval. Within 6 years, nationwide carriers must deploy either dispatchable location or a vertical location solution that complies with the metric ultimately adopted by the Commission in the 25 most populous cellular market areas. Within 8 years, nationwide carriers must have deployed their chosen vertical technology in the 50 most populous cellular market areas. The vertical standards slide provides a list of those top 50 CMAs based on population. Non-nationwide carriers serving these markets will have an additional year to comply with the benchmarks. Next slide, please. The test bed must conform to certain minimal requirements in order for test results derived from the test bed to be considered valid for compliance purposes. Therefore, the order requires that indoor location technologies be tested in an open, transparent, and technology-neutral testbed environment. It must use realistic indoor environments across 4 morphologies: dense urban, suburban, and rural. It must be managed by an independent administrator. The testbed must test for certain performance attributes known as key performance indicators, including location accuracy, latency, or time to first fix, and reliability, or yield. The testbed will demonstrate and characterize performance of each technology and will be later validated by that technology's performance as reflected by live call data. Essentially, the order requires CMRS providers to show that the indoor location technology used for purposes of its compliance testing is the same technology or technologies that it is deploying in its network and is being tested as it will actually be deployed in the network. Next slide, please. A key attribute of the order is the use of live 911 call data. Beginning at 18 months, providers will report aggregate live 911 call data from 6 test cities. Nationwide carriers will provide quarterly reports. Non-nationwide providers may submit reports every 6 months. Importantly, the data must show the percent of time each location technology solution was used, whether satellite, dispatchable location, horizontal location solution, a hybrid solution, or Z-axis, to meet the accuracy requirements enforced at the time. Measurements will be reported for each of the morphologies in each city. PSAPs will be entitled to obtain live call data from CMRS providers and seek Commission enforcement of these requirements within their jurisdictions, but they may seek enforcement only if they've implemented policies that are designed to obtain all 911 location information made available by CMRS providers, and that they have first attempted to resolve the issue informally with the CMRS provider. The key to successful implementation will be consistent data analysis. The coordinate-based requirements and dispatchable location benchmarks in the order are premised on data collection and analysis. We are creating the systems from which PSAPs can obtain detailed information about 911 call location accuracy. The purpose for doing so remains to ensure the most efficient emergency response capability possible, driven in part by more and more precise location information. As carriers begin to implement the new requirements and as data begins to flow, the public safety community needs to be prepared to analyze that data and ensure wireless providers are meeting their requirements and ensure that all areas of the community benefit from these new location technologies. Next slide, please. So the 6 test cities chosen are those that were identified by the ADIS ESIF as representative of all dense urban, suburban, and rural morphologies. So San Francisco Bay Area, Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, The Denver, Front Range, Colorado area, Philadelphia, and Manhattan, really for its dense urban properties, serve as the 6 test cities. Next slide, please. So how do we measure compliance? Slide 13 shows a simple analysis. Assume 2 technologies enter the test bed. Within the test bed, technology should perform at an ideal level. As indicated within the second column from the left, technology A demonstrates 90% success rate and technology B demonstrates 100%. These numbers will now serve as the baseline against which the live call performance of that technology will be measured. Let's further assume that a wireless carrier is pleased with these results and chooses to deploy both those technologies in its network. Again, our rules specify the carrier must certify that the technology meets the key performance indicators and that the technology will be deployed as tested in its network. Now we proceed to the third column from the left, actual 911 call performance. With data in hand and under this hypothetical exercise, we observe that technology A and technology B do not achieve the same level of performance as achieved in the test bed, providing accurate location for 50% and 20% of live calls respectively. Each on its own would not enable the carrier to reach the year 3 benchmark, for example. However, together, technology A and technology B enable the carrier to reach an overall score of 65% of calls providing location. As I explained earlier, the Commission's rules require increasing levels of performance from years 2 through 6. In this simple example, technology A and technology B will serve to enable the carrier to meet the benchmarks through year 4. However, as year 5 dawns, the benchmark reaches 70%. Therefore, the carrier will need to augment the previous solution in order to continue to meet Commission requirements. Next slide, please. I've referenced various reporting requirements, so let's review. At 18 months, nationwide CMRS providers must begin reporting live 911 data. They must submit initial implementation plan for meeting indoor requirements at the 3- and 6-year benchmarks. Non-nationwide providers have an additional 6 months to submit these plans. They must submit a progress report on the deployment and implementation of indoor requirements, and they must submit a privacy and security plan for the National Emergency Address Database. At 36 months, all wireless providers must submit a progress report on the implementation of their initial plan and assessment of any dispatchable location deployment efforts. Nationwide providers must submit a Z-axis metric to the Commission for review and approval. Let me emphasize again that the order requires all carriers to record and provide aggregate 911 call data to requesting 911 call centers to enable them to determine whether carrier performance in their jurisdiction is consistent with performance in the 6 test cities. If the call data shows performance is below the required thresholds, the call center may seek enforcement, of course, assuming it's already gone through the process of trying to work with the carrier. But 911 call centers and carriers must first, again, they must first attempt to resolve this issue before any enforcement action will be taken. And again, that's the benefit of having real data in hand, to be able to work very closely with carriers to ensure that the jurisdictions are properly covered. Next slide, please. There's a range of compliance certifications, certifications required within 60 days of each location benchmark, and providers must certify that technology being used has been certified in the test bed, and that the technology deployed across carriers' networks is consistent with test bed deployments and deployments in test cities for live 911 call data. Providers must recertify any time a new technology is introduced into the network. In addition, prior to activation of the National Emergency Address Database, the providers must certify that the database is only being used for responding 911 calls. Next slide, please. In addition, the order revises parts of the existing regulatory framework for all 911 calls, both indoor and outdoor. The order requires that confidence and uncertainty data for all wireless 911 calls, whether placed from indoors or outdoors, be delivered at the request of a PSAP on a per-call basis with a uniform confidence level of 90%. And it sets the order adopts a 30-second limit on the time period allowed for a CMRS provider to generate a location fix in order for the 911 call to be counted towards compliance with existing Phase 2 location accuracy requirements that rely on outdoor testing. But we do not extend this provision to the new indoor-focused requirements adopted in the order, pending further development of indoor location technology. We also require CMRS providers to provide 911 call data, including the percentage of wireless 911 calls to the PSAP that include Phase 2 location information, and 2, per-call identification of the positioning source method or methods used to derive location coordinates and or dispatchable location to any requesting PSAP. Compliance with the 30-second limit will also be measured from this data. Next slide, please. So I'm going to move ahead now and cover some of the other initiatives that we think you should know about. Some of you may recall that on August 8th, 2014, the Commission adopted an order that requires covered text providers to deliver emergency text to PSAPs that request them. A covered text provider includes all CMRS providers, as well as all providers of interconnected text messaging services that enable consumers to send text messages to and receive text messages from all or substantially all text-capable U.S. telephone numbers, including through the use of applications downloaded or otherwise installed on mobile phones. With adoption of the order, certain new rules came into effect towards the end of 2014 that impact not only covered text providers, but also PSAPs seeking to take advantage of this alternative method to provide access to their emergency services. First, there's a two-step implementation process for covered text providers. By December 31st, 2014, covered text providers must have achieved the capability to support delivery of text to 911, independent of whether they had received a PSAP request for such service. Covered text providers then have 6 months from December 31st, 2014, or until June 30th, 2015, to begin delivering 911 text messages to PSAPs that have submitted a valid request for text to 911 service on or before December 31st, unless another time frame is mutually agreed upon by the individual PSAP and the covered text provider. Covered text providers have 6 months from any valid PSAP request received after December 31st, 2014, to commence delivery of text to 911 for that PSAP. We currently have the text to 911 PSAP registry is now available online, and it can be accessed via the link on the slide. Now, PSAPs continue to roll out support for text to 911. If you consult the registry, you'll find that well over 200 jurisdictions or PSAPs are currently intaking text. One issue for them and for those that are not on that list is how to properly notify covered text providers that they need to begin delivering text to them. So our rules first do not impede PSAPs from directly notifying covered text providers to begin delivering text, assuming the PSAP can demonstrate that it's technically capable and authorized to do so. However, the Commission directed the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to develop and maintain a centralized database, the Text 911 PSAP registry, to reflect the text readiness of individual PSAPs. That database is now online, and it's really comprised of PSAPs that submitted a very basic form to the Commission, and it certifies that they're authorized and technically capable of handling text. And registration in that database, again, commences a 6-month implementation time frame for covered text providers. So again, also on the slide, there's a link to the form, as well as the email address to which the form can be emailed. Now, we anticipate updating the registry on a regular basis, and we plan to release a public notice each time we update it. Next slide, please. The Commission continues to be focused on resiliency and reliability of the 911 system. Next slide, please. This slide shows that over time, 911 outages have moved from being essentially a local incident, effectively affecting a relatively small number of people, to very large outages affecting multiple states and millions of individuals. A good part of this is related to the introduction of new technology platforms based on IP infrastructure, and with the concentration of critical 911 functions in large data centers or with providers that have not traditionally been part of the 911 end-to-end ecosystem. Next slide, please. Last October, the Bureau released a multi-state outage report that detailed significant 911 outages that affected an entire state or multiple states for an extended period of time. There's four examples there, but the common theme among these outages is that in each one was a sunny day outage. It was one not driven by environmental or terrorist activity, but instead, in some instances, poor software design or inconsistent application of known best practices. Next slide, please. So the Commission is focused on 2 efforts to address this problem. First, under new 911 reliability certification rules the Commission adopted in 2013, so-called covered 911 service providers. These are companies that provide 911 capabilities such as call routing and location information directly to a PSAP or emergency authority, must certify whether they comply with specified best practices or reasonable alternative measures in the areas of 911 circuit diversity, central office backup power, and diverse network monitoring. The certification will be phased in through an initial certification of at least 50% compliance with each element due October 15th of this year. Full certifications will then be due each year thereafter i.e. October 15, 2016, 2017, et cetera. Certifications will be collected through an online system similar to the FCC's Network Outage Reporting System, which is still in development but is expected to be ready for testing in spring 2015. The Bureau will be providing workshops and training opportunities on the use of this system once it's finished. The second major effort is in November, the Commission adopted a policy statement and a notice of proposed rulemaking regarding governance and oversight of 911 communications and accountability for reliable 911 service in light of changing technologies and the transition to next generation 911. This NPRM proposes a 911 governance structure designed to ensure that technology transitions are managed in a way that maximizes the availability, reliability, and resiliency of 911 networks, as well as the accountability of all participants in the 911 call completion process. The proposals are considered collaborative and technology neutral and underscore the Commission's commitment to working with state and local partners to protect the enduring values that consumers have rightly come to expect from their communications providers, and chief among them is the ability to reach emergency responders. Comments in that proceeding are due on or before March 9th, 2015, and reply comments will be due on or before April 7th, 2015. Next slide, please. One new effort underway will have significant impact on our understanding of the resiliency and reliability of the 911 system, particularly from the perspective of the optimal PSAP, including its cybersecurity profile and its network, operational, and virtual architectures. In August 2014, the August 2014 second report and order in the text 911 proceeding, the Commission found that further examination was needed in cooperation with state, local, and tribal nations and their associated PSAPs on the current structure and architecture of our nation's PSAPs. The large number of PSAPs, now nearing approximately 6,800, potentially increases the costs and resources needed from the communications industry, public safety community, and state, local, and tribal authorities. The Commission indicated that it was interested in determining whether additional consolidation of PSAP facilities and architecture would promote greater efficiency of operations, safety of life, and cost containment, while retaining needed integration with local first responder dispatch and support. This issue is especially timely as public safety communication systems are converting to NG911 in the coming years. So the task force was directed to study and report findings and recommendations on optimal PSAP system and network configuration in terms of emergency communications efficiency, performance, and operations functionality, to provide cost projections for conversion to an annual operation of PSAPs that incorporate such optimal system design, provide comparative cost projections for annual maintenance of all existing PSAPs annually, and what it will cost to upgrade them to NG911, and then recommendations on ways to ensure that states use E911 funds for their intended purpose. So in operation, though, the task force is presently comprised of 3 working groups to focus attention on specific issues. Working Group 1 is studying and reporting on optimal cybersecurity for PSAPs. Working Group 2 is studying and reporting on optimal approaches to NG911 architecture implementation by PSAPs. And Working Group 3 is going to examine ways for state, local, and tribal governments to address these issues. And it's going to examine and develop recommendations on optimal resource allocation and budgeting for PSAPs to enable the transition to NG911 and identify potential models for sustainable funding of PSAP NG911 operations. So TFOPA, as we call it, its activities can be monitored via the web link provided. And they just had their inaugural meeting on the 26th, and they're expected to meet again in late April to receive progress reports from each of the working groups. And then there'll be follow-on meetings this year that will enable the full task force to vote on the select recommendations offered by each working group. Next slide, please. I would be remiss if I did not mention the ongoing efforts of the Communications Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council, now in its 4th incarnation. The National Institute of Standards and Technologies developed a framework that PSAPs can use to evaluate risk and develop plans for addressing risk. And that is now serving as the framework for the task force I just mentioned. But also, the CISRIC 4's Working Group 4 is developing a set of recommendations on ways to implement the NIST framework in the communications sector writ large. So those recommendations are due in March and will have broad implications on the service providers that PSAPs and emergency operations centers rely on every day. Next slide, please. Our 5th topic today concerns 911 fees. Each year, the Public Safety Bureau submits a report to Congress on state-level funding for 911, E911, and NG 911 service. Congress mandated this report to put a spotlight on 911 fee diversion for non-911 purposes. Next slide, please. This year's report covers calendar year 2013 and finds states and other reporting jurisdictions collected 911, E911 fees or charges totaling approximately $2.4 billion. In calendar year 2013, 6 states, California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and Washington, and Puerto Rico reported diverting or transferring 911 E911 fee collections for purposes other than 911 E911. All told, and according to filed reports, approximately $183 million in collected 911 fees was diverted or otherwise directed away from supporting 911 services. On this slide, you'll find a link to the report on the FCC's website. We encourage you to review the data. Each state report is available in the separate Appendix D. As in years past, we seek comment on the report and on the responses submitted by states and other reporting entities, including the sufficiency and accuracy of the reported information. In particular, we seek comment on the diversion of fees identified in the report and including any additional information concerning the specific impact, if any, that such diversion has had on the provision of 911 service in those states. Comments are due February 23rd and reply comments March 24th. Next slide, please. So in closing, the Commission's focused on a number of areas. Today, I introduced the new indoor location accuracy regime, which sets clear and measurable benchmark metrics and timelines towards improving emergency response by more accurately locating wireless callers no matter where they're calling from. Second, as of the new year, wireless carriers and other interconnected text messaging providers are required to be text capable and to begin coordinating with PSAPs that have requested service and should be on target to be able to deliver text beginning by the end of June. The Text 911 Registry provides guidance to cover text providers on which PSAPs are text capable, and PSAPs should also avail themselves of the Commission's registry and submit the basic registration form for single point of contact notification. Third, the Commission's proposed rules to address gaps in 911 reliability and governance and welcomes your comments in the coming months. Fourth, the Task Force on Optimal PSAP Architecture is underway and promises to deliver a set of recommendations to guide PSAPs in cybersecurity, architecture implementations, and resource allocation as they implement NG 911. And lastly, the Commission's annual review of the collection and use of 911 fees continues to shed light on the resources collected for and devoted to emergency response. The Bureau would like to thank the National 911 Program and Laurie Flaherty for the opportunity to provide you with this overview today, as well as the good efforts of John Shiramonte and his colleagues from Mission Critical Partners to ensure a smooth webinar experience today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We do have one question that came in from Daryl. Daryl, I'm going to unmute you to ask your question.
What is the time frame for the new confidence, uncertainty, and time to first fix requirements to take effect?
My understanding is that those will take effect upon the effective date of the rules. So as soon as the rules are published, those go into effect in the Federal Register. But I will verify that. So.
Okay, I was just going to say, so the carriers don't have a transition time frame for converting their service factors to 90%?
Again, my understanding is that it's effective upon the publication of the rules.
Okay, thank you.
But I will verify back to you.
All right, thank you, Tim. And at this time, I'd like to turn it back to Laurie to introduce our next speaker. Laurie?
Thanks, Dane. Well, if you've been around 911 for any length of time, you either have heard of Jason Barber or you've heard Jason Barber. He's a well-known person, both in 911 because of his experience and his expertise. He's a former NENA president, but one of the things I like best about Jason is that he never forgot where he came from. He's from Johnston County, North Carolina, where he is the 911 director, and we couldn't be more pleased that he's with us today to share that experience and expertise. So, Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura, and I've enjoyed working with you over the years. Next slide. I'm going to try to get through this so we can have some questions. This is what we're going to try to cover in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Talking about Johnston County's journey through the next-gen network as well as a next-gen phone system, and then some of the lessons that we've learned along our journey. Next slide. This is sort of the pathway that we took, which started the latter part of 2012, first part of 2013, and really got serious at the NENA conference in Charlotte, which was in June of 2013. So what the next slides are going to show you is how we stepped through our needs assessments and the solution, and then ended up in the implementation. Next slide. Under our needs assessments, what we were looking to do is we wanted to find a solution that could meet our needs, and that we've come to realize that the reseller has a difficult time keeping up with the phone manufacturer's technology. As technology evolves, the 911 phone system has become so technologically heavy. So we wanted to try to find a single solution that kept the reseller involved and got the manufacturer more involved. So we did this, and in Johnston County we have two 911 centers. We have our primary center located in Smithfield, which is in the heart of Johnston County, and then we have a backup or overflow 911 center about 10 air miles from here in a town called Clayton. And we wanted a service that could provide both 911 centers to be online at the same time. So that meant we needed a manufacturer that could do the software and hardware capable of bringing up both centers, because when high call volume hits us, such as a snowstorm or hurricane, we do bring both 911 centers up. One becomes an answering point, the other becomes a dispatch point. So what we were looking for, it was very challenging, because we wanted to find a solution that kept up with the changing technology. Text to 911 was obviously one that we were keeping in mind, and we wanted a tremendous amount of redundancy built in, and we knew that was a tremendous need for us, and we wanted to stay on the cutting edge of technology. And a couple of slides later, you're going to see we really held our solution provider to not only traditional connectivity to the 911 network, but we wanted an LTE, a wireless connectivity back to the network, because even though we have redundant carriers into both 911 centers, MPLS carriers, they all have the last mile issue, in that the last mile, both carriers ride the last mile at the Smithfield PSAP, and then both carriers ride the last mile at the Clayton PSAP. So we wanted, we had a need to be able to say, well, okay, what happens? Can we get a technology that can help us get back to the cloud, so to speak, should the last mile become compromised? And I'm going to be telling you in a few minutes that we've been successful with an LTE technology rollout that helps mitigate that last mile. Next slide. In our solution assessment, as I said earlier, we wanted a single vendor that heavily relied on the manufacturer, and that's what we've done. We kept the reseller in play here in Johnston County that we've been with for years, and they developed a strong partnership with the CPE and network manufacturer, and we actually have our infrastructure is at the manufacturer's data centers instead of it being on site. And I know that sometimes is a huge pill to swallow for 911 directors, and I had finally came to the realization that having the CPE equipment physically located here, yes, I could put my hands on it, but I could not get a manufacturer or trained tech here in a reasonable time. So that's sort of what was the jumping off point for us to finally wrap our hands around. It's okay not to have the CPE equipment physically located at the 911 center. So we not only did we transition to a new 911 network, we transitioned to a hosted CPE solution. And that sort of limited the vendors that were out there, but we did want to do some vendor accountability. We didn't really want to be the first one to do this, so we went and looked at some other places that have actually deployed this type technology. We wanted a vendor that was definitely committed to NENA's I3 standard as it continues to evolve. We wanted a vendor that would give us a guarantee in writing that their product would continue to evolve as the NENA I3 standards continue to mature, so to speak. And then the procurement process. In North Carolina, the procurement process here is probably different from other states, but we had definitely a process we had to go through here. We had a scope of work we had to put in place with our reseller as well as the vendor manufacturer, the manufacturer of the CPE equipment, as well as the network for a turnkey solution. We didn't want any more finger pointing going on with the next technology that we selected, and that's why you see the turnkey on the bottom of this slide. I wanted to be able to make one phone call and have the issue resolved and sort of get out of the finger pointing contest that we've experienced in the past. Next slide. So this is what's been going on in the last 12 months. We've done our ingress network design, and don't want to get too technical here, but we have 2 MPLS network providers at our main center, 2 MPLS network providers at our secondary location. They both come in at the main piece out on different streets or different sides of the courthouse to try to eliminate that single point of failure. And then at the secondary location, it's not as big a facility, so they do from the street to the building, it is a single point of entry there. So realize that's a potential issue. And then we have deployed the LTE network system, and I can't say how great I am or happy about the success with that. We've got an LTE link at both locations, and we've been able to successfully test losing all of our MPLS connectivity through the traditional connections and be able to do full-fledged call volume, all consoles up on active calls through our LTE link back to the 911 network with no voice degradation at both locations. So we can have an LTE link here, an LTE link in our secondary location up should we lose our traditional MPLS connectivity. And the way we have this designed is that between the 2 911 centers, we have a 100 megabit connection. So if life is normal and we lose our MPLS network at our primary center from both carriers, but the MPLS network through the traditional connection is still available at the second location, we can stay physically in our primary location and get back to the cloud through our 100-bit connectivity pipe, if you will. So that allows us to be able to stay in Smithfield and get back to the cloud via our Clayton 911 center. Should that connectivity get compromised, as well as the MPLS networks get compromised, the LTE link then comes into play automatically. We don't have to do a thing. The infrastructure, the network is programmed so that the LTE links come online instantly, and we were able to demonstrate being on an active call where the traditional network was compromised. The system switched over to the LTE link with no voice quality drop, as well as once we were on the LTE link and the system sensed that the connectivity was reestablished through the traditional MPLS connectivity, the system would switch back with the call never dropped, no voice dropping. I just can't say how great. We're very pleased with that success, and we believe a lot of other 911 centers are going to use this as a potential technological option in IP 911 connectivity. As you can see, I probably have talked most about this. So one other thing I want to talk about is the GIS development. We have awarded a project now to where we've hired a company to go into Johnston County and GPS all the addresses in Johnston County with plans of using these GPS coordinates when we're able to do geospatial routing of our 911 calls. And we can't accomplish that without this address points and this database of all the addresses in Johnston County being geo-verified and geo-coded. Next slide. This just sort of shows you the path that we've done. We've done a lot since the first of this year. We're live with our EZNet. We're live with our IP selective router. We're live with the hosted CPE technology. We've been up and running with all three of those for about 3 weeks now. Can't say how much we're pleased with that. We've had a very good success there, and that includes with the LTE testing. Our letters have been sent to the carriers to now start sending us text to us. We're also looking at some address intelligence supplemental data applications coming later this year. And then as you can see, the address point project coming to an end, which hopefully will lead us to geospatial or I3 routing as soon as that technologically is available. Next slide. Some lessons that we've learned is that this doesn't happen overnight. Any of you that know me know that patience is something I didn't get, but I had to learn patience in this process because we're into 2 years of planning before we actually saw this come into play and actually working. I would tell you that to really research vendors. A lot of vendors tell you they can do things out there. When you roll up your sleeves to find out actually can they do it, you may be surprised what you find. Also, even with the vendors that we selected, sometimes they're reluctant, and I think they learned real quick I'm very persistent. When we want something, we want it. And then I can't stress enough, especially to my 911 cohorts, when you start journeying down this road, please have a subject matter expert with you. I've been in 911 since '88. I don't know everything there is to know, but I can tell you, we would not have accomplished what we have accomplished in Johnston County without the help of subject matter experts. And I guess now I'll try to do this presentation where we'd have at least 10 minutes for questions. So I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
All right, thank you, Jason. As a reminder, to ask a question, please use the WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, or press the raise hand button so we can unmute your phone line. And it looks like we have our first question from Dorothy.
Yes, my question is for Jason. Jason, your presentation was very interesting for a regional deployment. Is there coordination ongoing with the state and their NG911 effort?
Yes, I do sit on the state 911 board, and in North Carolina, we are venturing down this road as a state 911 board. We have an RFP out right now to help select some subject matter experts for the 911 board, with anticipation from a state level, that's putting out an RFP sometime in the next 12 to 18 months. Yes. And as far as the regional approach, we do have a neighboring county that is looking to utilize our Clayton location as their backup facility so they don't have to go and construct a backup 911 center. All the 911 centers in North Carolina last year got hit with a legislation mandating backup 911 centers by 2016. So all the 911 centers in North Carolina are scrambling now because the General Assembly said you've got to have a backup 911 option in place by July of 2016.
So if I understood you correctly, this local project could become a potential model for the state.
You could definitely connect the dots there. Yes, Dorothy.
Thank you.
But I don't know how the state project will turn out. I want to put that disclaimer in there. I can't say that this is what the state will go with.
All right. Do we have any more questions out there? Looks like we have our next question from Patrick. Do you mind typing in your question, please, Patrick? I don't see a phone next to you to unmute you.
I think I see his question. I think it says, is the state hosting the core components? At the present time, our core is not being hosted by the state or in the state of North Carolina. Now, will the state project address that? Again, I don't know. I'm sure there will be questions that the 911 board will be asking when it's, looking at its project. But currently, our core is not hosted in the state of North Carolina.
All right, thank you, Jason. At this time, are there any other questions for either Jason or Tim? I know we had to cut Tim's question session short.
Jason, this is Laurie. A question for you. What stakeholders were included in putting the plan together when you were planning your NG project?
I invited vendors. The local 911 provider has been with us, hand in hand through the whole project. We've also had the 911 board staff has been invited and has attended a lot of our planning. Attorneys, and then subject matter experts have been with us. We contracted with a consulting company to help us through this project. And I'm trying to be vendor neutral, so I'm not endorsing any one of them, so to speak.
Jason, this is John Sharvanti. So a solution like this probably was pretty expensive. How did you end up gathering the funds needed to put this project together? Was there grant programs for the state?
The way the North Carolina 911 statute is written for the 911 revenue part, all of this project is covered by our 911 surcharge. So we didn't actually have to hit the ad valorem tax or the general fund for this project. So we had our 911 revenue stream was strong enough to be able to fund this project.
In addition to your regular operations?
Yes, and at the end of the day, what we realized is the increase in cost was very minimal once we took what we were paying for traditional 911 service and what we were paying for telephone CPE equipment based on the premise that we purchased it every 5 years, replaced it every 5 years. If you take that cost, overlay it with what we were paying for traditional 911 service, the monthly increase was only very insignificant.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions for Jason or for Tim?
I'm seeing a question from Richard English. I think he's asking what's the data throughput available via the tertiary LTE network. The network that we're using here is 4G, obviously LTE. When we, at our 911 center in Smithfield, when we had all of our consoles on an active call, we were only pulling like one and a half megabits of data, and we had plenty of room to go there. And one of the requirements that we wanted in place was that the LTE provider, the tower that the LTE network that we were using, we did not want hoodwinked, if you would, by the local phone office, because if we did, then we still got that last mile problem. So that's one of the things we checked into, is to make sure that the tower that we're actually attached to here with the LTE connection is not dependent on the phone office here that's within the last mile. If that answers your question, Richard.
All right, thank you, Jason. Laurie, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I'd just like to thank both Tim and Jason. We really appreciate their time and sharing all of their expertise with everyone today.
All right. Thank you, Laurie. This concludes today's webinar. We appreciate everyone's participation. An archived version of today's webinar will be available on 911.gov soon. The next seminar is scheduled for Tuesday, April 14th at 12 noon Eastern Time. We hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you and have a great day.